Hello, today we'll be modeling the Yeti SB6 mountain bike, just the frame part of it. Um, so we'll hop right into it. So running through just sort of the overview of the project, started by inserting a canvas. And I chose one that actually has a lot of the measurements on there. So I did a large frame, basically just created a line and then scaled the canvas up to 48 inches. Then we sculpted basically the bodies in two parts. The first, the mainframe part, and the back for the rear wheel. Then I basically created a circle and extruded that in order to create the cylinder for the front fork. Rotated, moved that into place, and joined it with the front frame. Cut out some holes for where the crank would go, as well as the pedals, and then just some of the nuts and bolts that could be added in later if you want to go further. As well as extrude some other circles, basically just some brackets in order to fill out the empty cut. And created those, made those into some components, attached some layers, and split the bodies to add some carbon fiber highlights. Then took the pipe command and ran that around the splits in order to create a nice little parting line. And that is the finished product. So getting started, like I said, just started by sculpting a body. I started with a cylinder. So I created a circle, I think about 2 inches in diameter. Then took that cylinder in the sculpt environment and rotated that into place using an orthographic view. And that was the starting point for the first frame. Now this process did take a couple of hours, so I sped up the next part of the video in order to just show you some of the tweaks in the building of the rest of this frame a little faster. It does get a little choppy at some points. I think that's because whenever the screen record maybe didn't record with enough frames per second, as well as just periodical lag while I was using the program. So bear with me on that. Basically, then use that cylinder and drag using the Alt key to add material. So just dragging that and scaling that, matching that canvas. Now at first I did think I could use symmetry, however after I built this part of the frame I did realize that it was actually extruding two separate parts, as you can see right there when I turn a little bit. So I had to go back and turn that symmetry off and then just click both make sure I was clicking both sides to grab both faces. So after I went through and created that entire top frame, I then moved on to the second sculpted piece, which was the back of the frame for the rear wheel. I decided to do this one using the create face command. So basically just traced out some faces along that outline there, making sure to click on 4 points. I knew that I only wanted it to be about 2 faces wide, so just making the boxes about half of the height, and then just always making sure to try to keep the geometry as clean as possible, so not too many slanted corners, although it does get a little wacky in some places. And I was occasionally checking out an additional picture, just to give a little more information. So went ahead and sped this part up as well for you. Again, sorry, a little bit choppy, but basically just creating faces around that image there. One thing to keep in mind, just making those smaller faces as you go around the bends so you get a cleaner curve. Those faces get a little slanted. Didn't cause me any problems, but something to be conscious of. And then just tweaked out, made sure everything was lined up correctly. Had to do a little bit of problem solving down here as well, just to create that curve with only 4 faces, or making sure that I was using 4 faces. Always make sure to save as you go. Definitely had this crash on me a few times. So not the cleanest geometry, but it wasn't necessarily going to be the most complicated part. So some of those faces were quite alright, just being a little slanted. A little more tweaking, get everything lined up perfectly. And just checking to make sure I was getting getting everything right by looking at that other picture, different view. I then thickened this so that it was, I think I thickened it about a half an inch to make it an actual structure. Made sure to click the soften, thicken, the soft thicken, so that those were nice rounded edges. Actually, I think I did about 1 inch, and then moved it over so that it was on the sides, and sort of expanded that the back part of it out so that it had room for that wheel, and then it sort of dips inward to connect to where the frame is. See that in just a minute. There we go. Wasn't sure if I wanted to rotate or not. I just kept it straight. It's hard to tell from this view, and there weren't a lot of orthographic views offered online. Then just basically pulled out the bottom a little bit. It was a little thicker, probably for some structural integrity. Make sure there's a smooth transition between that thicker part and the thinner part. Sorry, it gets a little choppy right here, but basically what I'm just doing is thickening out that bottom part of the frame just a little bit. After that was good, I proceeded to mirror that feature so that there was one on each side, obviously, to connect with the bike, the back wheel. And what's nice about that is that everything that I did to one mirrors and happens to the other. So that's a really nice feature. And then I had to add in an edge here to sort of get that last little feature on the back of the frame. I'm not actually too sure what that's for, but wanted to make sure everything was included. So added an edge to make a smaller face, and then pulled 2 of those faces out, again holding the Alt command. I think I made the face too big at first, so I had to go back and change that edge. Well, the top one's too fat. So went back, changed that edge, and then pulled those out. Again, adding material. I then deleted these top 2 faces to create that open hole, and then just tweaked these into place to, again, match the sketch. Again, the geometry got a little wacky here in the back, but did my best to sort of clean it up a little bit and straighten out some of those edges. Finish that form, so we have the main parts of the frame now. Then made a sketch where all these sort of attachment points are for the shocks, and the where the crank would attach. And proceeded to press pull those circles in order to cut through the frame. Then extruded, offset that circle in a little bit so that I had something to extrude, and so that wasn't just an open hollow structure right there. Did the same for this whole Once that was all done, we got to toss on some materials. Chose a nice glossy black. I did realize I wanted to add a couple extra, a little more detail to it. So what I did was go in and draw some splines where you saw sort of these extra little highlights on the bike, as well as added some of my own. Just make things a little more interesting for the render. I was unable to take those splines. At first I was thinking I had to extrude them, but and I remember you can actually just go to split body, choose your body, and then I turned that body off so I could get to the spline, which is in the middle, and then it basically used that feature to split all the bodies. After that, I went through and took the pipe command on each of those new faces along that line. If you actually just select the outline of where it was split, it'll run a pipe command and cut to make a nice little parting line. Then finished up by attaching some carbon fiber to those faces and going into the render environment, playing around with some of the environment settings, decided to just go with a nice little color background, extended the focal length a little bit to create some more dynamic things. It was difficult to find a good angle to sort of create some more dynamic renders, but by increasing the focal length and then sort of getting up close to the bike, you got some pretty cool effects. So that's my final, and thank you for listening.